Skye, I have read your sister's memoir cover to cover. It gives you sort of the best possible sense you could have of someone without having met them. I wonder, coming up on this big anniversary, how it is that you are thinking about and remembering your sister.
This is every day it gets a little bit harder, to be honest with you. I mean, Virginia was a warrior. I mean, you know, I think the fact that she was able to come out and speak out the way she did, it's just so much bravery, and it inspired so many other survivors out there to come forward, including her survivor sisters. And, you know, it's really a day for the world to share with us. And, you know, we thought for a moment, should we just do this in private? But the reality is it deserves to be shared with the world, because Virginia deserves that day. Virginia deserves that honor. And we're going to keep fighting for her. There's so much more work to go, but it's a hard day. It's been a hard week, but we want to share that with the world.
As we sit here, Amanda, you are shaking your head, nodding in agreement. I said this to you all privately before we came on the air, but I think that we would not be where we are today if not for the courage of Virginia. The courage for her to come out, speak publicly on camera years before. You know, you have Maria Farmer that did the work, going to the FBI, and they didn't believe her. Decades later, Virginia, who had the courage to speak out about her own experience from her own perspective and name names. Mm-hmm. She just didn't say what happened. She said who did it at a time where she was not protected. Mm-hmm. So I just think that she needs her flowers here. And you both, your family, is the reason that her legacy is this and not what Donald Trump has said. And I just think the way you all have arrested this narrative, I know it's hard, but it is important, and you all have made a difference.
I think it's really hard as an average person losing her and then deciding what happens afterwards. And I think when her name was spoken in public and she couldn't speak for herself, who else could step in those shoes other than the people who knew her the best? It's been an extraordinary honor to fill that space. Virginia, of course, came forward when many couldn't, and she blazed that trail for them. And now we get to just carry that torch further for her. It's a privilege and it's an honor. And what we've seen this year from her survivor sisters and us being able to be a part of that community and rally together and see what has happened in such a short amount of time is so extraordinary. And it's all because of the beginning works that Virginia laid.
Skye, Monday, King Charles is coming to the United States to make a visit. You've been outspoken, saying that you request an audience with the King of England. And God love you for saying that, by the way. It's a very important thing. They said this about it, quote, "We fully understand and appreciate the survivors and their advocates' position, but can only reiterate that anything arising from such a meeting that could potentially impact an ongoing police inquiries and assessments and any potential legal action that could result from that would be to the detriment of the survivors themselves in their pursuit of justice." Media response there, if you will. Why is it so important for you to be able to say something to the king?
Yeah. Well, I think the way they responded is it's just as like what you said. It's just a fancy way of saying what they're supposed to say. But the reality is when you look a survivor or survivor's family in the face, it's very, very different. He needs to hear the stories firsthand, not over the news, not over a media outlet. He needs to hear it from us directly. And that's why I request a presence with him, because truthfully unfortunately, his brother's on the wrong side of this. My sister's on the very right side of this. And, you know, what a moment where he could show the United States, his country in the UK, and the people around the world that a leader is listening. A leader, while the United States has a leader calling it a hoax and victims or whatever, he's over here and showing and setting an example. That's why I'm requesting the meeting, because somebody's got to step up from a leadership standpoint.
Yeah. Amanda, Simone, and Luke have heard me say this before, but when I was reading Virginia's memoir, I was so struck by her retelling of the moment where she meets the prince. And her wanting to run and go get her Kodak Fun Saver camera because it would be exciting to her mom that she got to meet someone so high profile, which to me, given that Virginia and I are almost exactly the same age, just reminds me how young she was, right? The innocence of wanting to take a picture with someone you'd never met. The moment we were living in when there were still disposable cameras that we were all using. And that is why I do think hearing directly from survivors, their stories really does matter because it captures sort of a time and a place and an innocence lost. It is why you have had House Democrats pushing so fiercely through the Oversight Committee for the opportunity to make sure that anyone who is attached to this is held accountable, that there are depositions where hard questions can be asked of people who had power, who could have taken action and chosen not to, and yet we find ourselves at an impasse. We had Robert Garcia, the ranking Democrat on the committee, with us yesterday. I want you to take a listen to what he had to say about the moment we find ourselves in, and then you and I can talk about what accountability looks like on the other side.
We've issued 18 bipartisan subpoenas that Democrats have forced on Republicans. We've gotten the Epstein files. We've gotten the Epstein estate. We're getting critical information. And now we're demanding Pam Bondi come in for her deposition. And all of a sudden, House Republicans, Oversight, we here, the White House and the Speaker, are essentially scared of Oversight Democrats and our success in forcing these fights. And so they're now creating these fake hearings where you can't make motions, you can't file subpoenas, there's no rules for debate, and you can't even call a witness.
Amanda, you have been in this fight on behalf of someone you love for a really long time. Is your feeling that you are closer to accountability today than you were when you started this fight?
100%. I feel like we're closer. And that's exactly why those who don't want this to come to surface are panicking and trying to create ways to block the truth from coming forward. And there are multiple things going on. We have proven that the people have the power. We're seeing states act like New Mexico, reclaim their power and reinvestigate what happened at Zorro Ranch. And, I was disappointed to hear that some of the House Republicans were considering even a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. What a travesty that is. And it's really hard. I mean, we've been at the Hill. We've sat with many Republicans on the other aisle, and they are genuine in those conversations. And so I would say to them that if you truly are on the side of the survivors, pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell is not justice for survivors. And I would say, and I would ask you to call that back. We will not let that happen. So I want to remind everyone that we have to be on the right side of this thing. This is not a partisan issue. We have seen more support on the Democratic side, but I know that there are Republicans, we've sat with them, that care. And so we just need to see more courage. We need to see more truth. We need to see more action.
Skye, it's said that grief is only love looking for a place to go. And that love is going to the National Mall this weekend.
I was about to make all of them cry. I said, oh, goodness.
Tell us a little bit about this beautiful butterfly on your lapel. What does it symbolize? What does it mean? And tell us about how the butterfly is going to play such a role in this ceremony honoring your sister. By the way, all the other survivors of this horrific abuse.
Yeah, you'll see survivors wearing the butterfly lapel consistently, and it's a representation of Virginia, but it's also a representation of a victim to a survivor. It's the metamorphosis, especially something that could perceive to be ugly or not, not powerful, transitions into something that is so beautiful and powerful and loving, and that's what a victim to a survivor is, and that's why we wear these butterflies, because it's a piece of Virginia with us every step of the way. And even though she can't be here to speak for herself, we won't let her voice be thrown into other people's names or her legacy hindered in one way or the other. She paved the way for us. These butterflies are a way to keep honoring her so she can continue to carry that torch with us. She's still here.